The presidential motorcade moves slowly through the heart of Dallas. The convertible glides between tall buildings as crowds press against the curb, waving, cheering, stretching their hands toward the open car. In the back seat, the President of the United States and the First Lady lean forward slightly, acknowledging every smile. In front of them sit the Governor of Texas and his wife, all of them positioned on the right side of the vehicle as it continues its deliberate crawl through the city. There is nothing unusual in the air, nothing that suggests the next seconds will fracture the country. Then a sharp crack cuts through the noise. A second blast follows almost instantly. The third ends everything. The president collapses into the seat. Secret Service agents react at once, shouting, climbing onto the back of the car, urging the driver to accelerate. The convertible surges forward toward Parkland Hospital. Behind them, confusion spreads across Dealey Plaza as witnesses scream, run, and point toward the upper floors of the Texas School Book Depository. One photographer claims he saw the barrel of a rifle retracting into a window after the final shot. Inside the speeding car, there is no conversation, no analysis, no attempt to understand. There is only urgency. At Parkland Hospital, doctors rush the president into Trauma Room 1. Despite the catastrophic head wound, he is still clinging to life. Dr. Malcolm Perry takes command. He identifies two separate injuries, a devastating wound to the head and a smaller one near the front of the neck. In an attempt to restore an airway, he enlarges the neck wound to perform a tracheostomy. As he makes the incision, blood and air bubble outward. The wall of the trachea has been torn apart. Transfusions begin. Oxygen flows. Every measure available is pushed forward, but the heart refuses to return. The president is pronounced dead. As his body is prepared, several old scars surface under the harsh lights of the trauma room. A mark on the right thigh, a long surgical line from a previous appendectomy, and another scar across the lower back, the result of earlier spinal surgeries that traced back to injuries first aggravated during his service in the Second World War. Hours later, the autopsy reveals the full extent of the destruction. The right side of the brain is shattered beyond recognition. The conclusion is immediate and unambiguous. Two perforating gunshot wounds caused by high-velocity projectiles fired from behind and from an elevated position. Photographs are taken, exposed, and handed over to the Secret Service. The tragedy, however, is nowhere near finished. As investigators scramble across Dallas, police apprehend a suspect, a former Marine. A man whose history is a mosaic of instability, volatility, and radical beliefs, Lee Harvey Oswald. He denies every accusation. The plan is to transfer him to the county jail. Journalists pack the basement of the Dallas Police Department. Cameras are positioned. Lights are hot. Officers gather around the narrow corridor. Oswald appears, escorted between detectives. He squints against the lights, looking disoriented, irritated, defiant. Then a figure breaks through the crowd. A man lunges forward, raises a revolver, and fires a single shot directly into Oswald's abdomen. The scene unfolds live on national television. Millions witness it in real time. Officers swarm the shooter, pinning him against the pavement. His name is Jack Ruby. His explanation is disturbingly simple. He claims he acted on impulse, overwhelmed by grief, trying to spare the First Lady from a trial that would keep the assassination in headlines for months. But shock quickly turns into suspicion. Ruby is not an average citizen. He manages nightclubs. He mingles with police officers. He has a reputation for volatility. And now he has murdered the only man accused of killing the president. How did he get that close? And why was he armed inside a police facility? Those questions ignite the first wave of theories. Within hours, friends and officers admit they have known Ruby for years. At least 50 members of the Dallas Police Department had interacted with him in some capacity. Some describe him as polite and organized. Others call him explosive, unpredictable, and eager for attention. Rumors trace him back to minor roles connected to the criminal underworld, small errands, questionable associates, and an old connection to figures once linked to Al Capone. Whispers mention odd trips to Cuba. The puzzle becomes darker with every piece. Yet the official position is immediate and firm. Ruby acted alone. Oswald acted alone. The deaths of the president and the accused assassin are not part of any coordinated plot. But the public does not accept simple answers to complicated tragedies. Alternate possibilities begin to circulate. Ruby silenced Oswald to prevent him from revealing something. Ruby eliminated a liability on behalf of organized crime. Certain officers facilitated his access as part of a cover-up. And somewhere in the shadows, the Central Intelligence Agency becomes a recurring suspect in speculation. The country spirals into fear and distrust. And to restore order, the President of the United States creates a special investigative body, the Warren Commission, to examine every detail of the case. But long before Ruby stepped into a police basement with a revolver, his life had been shaped by chaos. He was born into a household fractured by violence, a father who drank heavily and lashed out, a mother whose mental health deteriorated into paranoia and instability. Arguments and aggression filled the walls of their home. Ruby spent most of his childhood outside, seeking attention from adults on the streets, drifting deeper into environments no child should enter. He was eventually sent to a Jewish reformatory, then later taken in by a foster family on a farm, only to return to the same turmoil he had tried to escape. As an adult, he became restless, explosive, and constantly searching for validation. He collected minor arrests. He crossed paths with questionable figures. He managed nightclubs and strip venues, forming affinity with officers who frequented the establishments he ran. He wanted to be seen, recognized, acknowledged. That desperate hunger for attention would become a central piece of speculation the moment he shot Oswald on live television. But the other half of the story belongs to the man Ruby killed. Lee Harvey Oswald's life was a long sequence of instability. He moved through more than 20 cities as a child. He spent time in orphanages. He struggled socially, emotionally, academically. At 15, a psychiatrist described him as displaying schizoid traits and a deviant personality style. During his time in the Marine Corps, he fired accidental shots, clashed with superiors, and even discharged his weapon into the jungle for no reason. But the most alarming moment came overseas when he leaked classified information to the Soviet Union while stationed as a radar operator in Japan. From that point on, his path turned even darker. He defected to the Soviet Union, requested citizenship, and when denied, attempted suicide by cutting his wrists in a hotel bathtub. The Soviets allowed him to stay under strict supervision. They gave him an apartment, a salary, a job as a factory worker. All the while, the KGB watched closely. Eventually, he returned to the United States with a wife and child, seeking recognition but finding only frustration. He isolated himself, turned violent at home, produced forged documents, and immersed himself in increasingly radical political beliefs. After losing his job in the spring of that crucial year, something in him appeared to snap. Part 1 ends here. Oswald's final hours on the outside unfold with a grim inevitability. After leaving the Texas school book depository, he drifts through the streets, moving quickly but not aimlessly. His behavior draws attention. When a Dallas police officer named J.D. Tippett spots him and realizes he fits the broadcast description of the suspected assassin, the officer pulls over. What happens next unfolds in less than half a minute. Oswald approaches the patrol car. The officer says something through the window. Oswald suddenly steps back, draws a revolver and fires. 3 shots strike Tippett in the torso, and a final shot to the head ends the officer's life instantly. A dozen witnesses watch in shock as Oswald flees. Within the hour, police track him down inside a movie theater and arrest him. He will never walk free again. Inside police headquarters, Oswald is agitated, pacing, demanding lawyers, demanding recognition, accusing authorities of framing him. Reporters swarm the building. Officers struggle to maintain order. The country wants answers, and every camera lens is aimed directly at him. But answers disappear the moment Ruby pulls the trigger. Now the only man capable of explaining his motive, and possibly the events in Dallas, lies dying on a stretcher, whispering that he is just a patsy. With Oswald gone, the nation becomes desperate for clarity, and attention shifts fully to Jack Ruby, who is transported to a cell of his own, now facing a capital murder charge. As investigators dig through Ruby's life, the portrait becomes increasingly complex. He is impulsive, emotional, often unpredictable. But he is also strangely meticulous when it comes to his relationships with police officers. Investigators discover that at least 50 members of the Dallas Police Department knew him well enough to greet him by name. He offered them free drinks, free entry, favors, and in return they offered information, influence, and access. This is the detail that fuels the earliest theories. Was Ruby simply a man overwhelmed by grief, or was he a man positioned perfectly to carry out an order? To understand this fully, the Warren Commission attempts to examine every thread. They gather testimonies, documents, transcripts, and long interviews that reveal the most uncomfortable aspects of Ruby's past. They learn that he once worked as a runner for individuals affiliated with organized crime. They learn of his trip to Cuba. They collect stories about his constant desire to impress people in power, his volatility, his emotional extremes, his tendency to insert himself into dramatic situations, but no direct evidence surfaces tying him to a larger plot. That answer, however, satisfies almost no one. Public distrust expands when letters begin surfacing, letters written by Ruby himself while awaiting trial. In them, he insists that there are things he cannot say publicly, things that would put his life in danger if spoken in Texas. He pleads to speak in Washington, D.C., under federal protection. He claims people are watching him, people who want him silenced. When the commission declines to move him, Ruby becomes frantic. His mental state spirals. He believes he is being poisoned. He believes he is being monitored. And then, suddenly, his physical health collapses. Doctors discover cancer in his liver, lungs, and brain. Within weeks, he is dead. His final statement is a denial of any conspiracy, insisting he acted alone. But the timing of his death and the mystery surrounding his fears ensure that speculation will never end. Meanwhile, the shadow surrounding Oswald grows even longer. The more the commission learns about his life, the more disturbing the pattern becomes. Oswald's behavior in the Marine Corps reveals a young man drawn to secrets, drawn to conflict, drawn to betrayal. His defection to the Soviet Union is a saga of desperation, manipulation, and instability. His time in Minsk paints him as a restless outsider, never satisfied, never grounded. His return to the United States deepens the contradictions. A man who wanted to be remembered but could not hold a job. A man who preached political ideology while abusing his wife. A man who wrote letters begging organizations to take him seriously. By the time he purchases the Italian-made carbine that will change history, he has already failed at almost everything else. These two trajectories, Ruby's hunger for attention and Oswald's hunger for purpose, collide in a basement hallway under the brightest lights television could produce. But the story does not end there. In the months following Ruby's death, Classified documents begin circulating behind closed doors. One letter, written by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, identifies Jack Ruby as an occasional informant from several years earlier. Another report describes a conversation in which Ruby allegedly invites another informant to watch fireworks from a spot directly facing the Texas School Book Depository, only weeks before the assassination. The wording is vague, cryptic, and impossible to verify, but it is enough to ignite decades of suspicion. Then there is the behavior that puzzles investigators the most. Ruby adored his two dogs. He treated them as family. Friends said he would never leave them alone for more than a short period, never abandon them. But on the morning he shot Oswald, he left both dogs locked inside his car without explanation. For some, this is proof he did not plan anything, that he acted impulsively in a storm of emotion. For others, it is proof he left in such a hurry because someone summoned him. For a small but persistent group, it is evidence that Ruby's actions were not his own. None of these theories are ever confirmed, and none are ever buried. While the Warren Commission publicly concludes that Oswald acted alone and Ruby acted alone, the country remains divided. Millions of Americans believe the truth went deeper into political factions, intelligence agencies, criminal organizations, or secret networks that never made it onto official documents. And the uncertainty only grows when considering the final detail of the case. All three men at the center of America's defining tragedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Jack Ruby, died in the same hospital, Parkland Memorial. One entered as the President of the United States and left in a flag-draped coffin. One entered as the alleged assassin and left as a homicide victim. One entered claiming to be a patriot avenging a fallen leader and left insisting he had acted alone, terrified that he would be remembered as part of a conspiracy. Their stories end in the same hallways, but the questions they leave behind travel far beyond them. Even today, more than half a century later, millions believe the whole truth was never revealed, and every document, every rumor, every unanswered detail keeps the mystery alive. Not because people want fantasy, but because in the most shocking moment of American history, too many pieces still refuse to fit. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next chapter in our documentary series. Your support keeps these investigations alive.